Welcome to the Soulcery Podcast, your sacred space to delve into spiritual tools, topics, and practices that will illuminate your path of soul remembering and healing. I'm your host, Ligia Costa, a soul guide, alchemist, soul writing coach, and the creator of the Trust Pathway. I'm deeply grateful to have you here with me. Together, we'll embark on a profound exploration of self-discovery and healing, unlocking the secrets that lie within. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Soulcery Podcast. Today I'm so excited to have this guest with us. To me, it's like having a celebrity in the podcast. I just told her that backstage. I'm so grateful that Melissa Amos came into the podcast and she's gonna talk about Akashic Records and so many wisdom I'm sure will come through. But before we go into our beautiful conversation, I'd like to talk about how Melissa is such an empowering woman that is here to help spiritual curious people all around the world to cultivate their spirituality, to embrace their intuition, and to break free from past restrictions. Melissa is qualified as a soul transformational therapist, a spiritual counselor, Akashic Records Reader, and Holy Fire Reiki Master Teacher. She's also an author. She wrote her book, Memoirs of a Mystic in Training, where she inspires the reader to understand the thread that weaves through the tapestry of our lives and reminds us of the endless possibilities that are available to us in the marvelous messiness we call our lives. Melissa, I'm
Hello.
so grateful to have you here.
Thank
Tell
you.
us, tell us everything. How did you embarked on this spiritual journey and to be the teacher and the therapist and the coach and the healer that you are today?
Well, thank you. Where do I begin? So I think it's important to acknowledge that when I was growing up, my grandma was a hypnotherapist,
Mhm.
and so from the age of, from what I remember, around 8 years old, I used to go and visit her, and she'd take me on these little journeys across what she'd call the Rainbow Bridge. And so from the age of 8, I was really allowed to be immersed in my imagination. I started to understand that our thoughts and our emotions aren't the control of our life, that visualizations and kind of going into these like make believe, I suppose, actually have more power than we think. And it really launched me onto this curious quest on how the mind and the body influence and talk to each other. So, I was even at a young age reading all the like quite kind of psychological books, right?
Mhm.
But it wasn't until I was then in my 20s and I was going through life as one goes through. I had the job and I'd been to university and I'd got the house and, got the car and I got all the things that I was meant to have and that society, I suppose, expects you to have by a certain age. And, life was fine, but that's what it was. And I was like super stressed and felt like I carried the world on my shoulders. And because of that, I started to get a massage, like massages, right? And one day I'm having a massage with this new lady, and she puts her hands over my head, and she's like, I could feel this energy. And I was like, what was that? And she went, oh, it was Reiki. And I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. So I had some Reiki treatments with her, and I started to realize that, okay, there's something going on here. And I was quite skeptical. I was all about the mind and the body, but the soul thing, I was like, no, I don't really know. That led me to learning Reiki, not expecting anything. I was like, nothing's going to happen. I'm just going to go for this weekend, and life will carry on the same as it did before the weekend. And how wrong was I? Because the moment I could feel that energy moving through my hands, I was like, whoa, this is not something I've ever explored. I can feel and I know it's working. I know I'm not making this up. And so if I've shut myself off to like that, then what else have I shut myself off to? And
Mm.
so that started me on this journey, like a quest on, I just wanted to know everything. So I started to learn about the law of attraction and manifesting, and energy work, and the nature of disease on the body, and even like the quantum physics and the quantum mechanics of life. And I was like learning NLP and coaching, and like really kind of bringing everything together. And then eventually I discovered the Akashic Records, which gave me another massive change. So like Reiki gave me this huge change and perspective shift. The Akashic Records really helped me understand more about the quality of life and of purpose and of karma and of actually our everyday actions. And for me, as I began to really delve into the records, they helped me understand more about how and why all of these other spiritual philosophies
Mm.
and techniques like Reiki, like the law of attraction, like visualization, like cord cutting,
Mm.
all the things that we do, they help me understand actually how they work and why they work, and also why they sometimes don't work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I kept following my nose, and here I am.
We can get so into this rabbit hole, isn't it?
Oh
Like
my god,
when
yeah.
we when we start in this quest, it's
Mhm.
just this rabbit hole. We just find so many amazing things, and then we get curious and we want more knowledge and
Right.
understanding. So, how was your experience the first time you went into Akashic Records?
So I suppose quite like the Reiki, I didn't know what I was expecting, and I'd never heard of them.
Mm.
And there was a series of synchronicities that basically led me to having a reading with this lady, and I didn't know what they were. I looked them up before our session started, and it said, "Oh, it's this library of your soul." I was like, "Okay." And how she did it is she opened up my records, and we opened them up together, and she just said to me, "What are you experiencing?" And what I was experiencing was a lot. I was having physical sensations in my body. I was having like almost like videos playing out in front of my eyes. I was experiencing a lot physically, mentally, emotionally, like all the things. And her job in our session really was like pulling out energy and asking me the right questions so that I'd started to direct into things. So before I went into my records, I was already at that point reading, like doing readings. I'd been attuned into Reiki for almost 10 years. I loved it. I was Reikiing every day. I'd done my Reiki master training in about 2010, I think. So it was a massive part of my life. I was already, even at that point, I was starting with this business. I'd already been doing a few bits. But during the session that I had with her, she asked me this question. She said, "Go and explore your life as a teacher." And I said to her, well, I didn't say to her, what I thought in my head was, why would I do that? Like, I'm not a teacher. That was literally what I said. And I went into this life, and I started to understand that I did have this life as a teacher, and I died in that life thinking that I'd wasted my life because I'd gone away from my family. The school that I was working with got like torn down. I was like being hated on by the community. There was all this stuff going on that I had died with this understanding that this isn't for me. I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have followed my heart. I should have stayed at home. But actually, while I was in the session, and we kind of pulled back a bit, one of the children that I taught came to me in the session
Wow.
and said to me, "Oh, Miss, I want to thank you for the work that we did together. Because of you and because of your belief in me, I now was able to create this whatever it was." Which allowed me then to, leave my community and then like basically go and change the world. And I was in that moment, I was like, wow, my life was not wasted. I was exactly where I was meant to be at the time, and
Mm.
that what I did helped them, which then had a massive ripple effect outwards. And whilst I didn't think much of it at the time, I was like, well, that was cool, and I felt good. It was 3 weeks later, and I didn't even make a conscious connection with this, but it was literally 3 weeks later. I found myself finally doing my Reiki teaching, which
Mm.
I could have done 10 years before, but I didn't. And I did my Reiki teacher training, and then straight away I had people like, I really want you to teach me Reiki. And I was like, what? And then people started asking me to run workshops on various things, and I was like, what? And then I went back and I was like, wow, that was all from that understanding. It's like it lifted a
Okay.
block,
Mm.
and it was from then that really my whole business and all my offerings started to move more into guidance, group work, teaching,
Mm.
sharing.
And that was how long ago?
So
This.
that was around 2016
Mm.
that happened. So like 8 years from now.
That's amazing. And as you said, I would assume 8 years ago, the word and the concept of Akashic Records, although has been known for years, it wasn't that known before.
Right,
People were not aware of it.
right.
So when did you started to implement the Akashic Records into your work with your clients?
Well, so something else happened in that session, and I was told in that session, I was told in that session you should be working in the Akashic Records. That's what I
Oh,
heard,
really?
and I was like, I'd literally heard of you 24 hours before. And so like again, I didn't come out and go, right, I need to be working in the Akashic Records, I'm going to do this. But something really weird happened, right? So this must have been around about the October 2016. I took my Reiki teacher training, and I did my first Reiki teaching January 2017. So it was like 3 months later. But I'd been in the Reiki world for 10 years at this point. So I felt quite confident. Anyway, somebody, and I don't even know how this happened, but somebody contacted me and said, I heard that you know about the Akashic Records. And I was like, well, a bit. I've done a session and I've been reading a lot about it and I've been listening to things. And she's like, well, something's made me contact you and I want to run a class on them. And I was like, well, I'm not sure I'm quite qualified for that, because I've literally known about the concept for 3 months. But somehow she talked me into it. And she's like, well, I know bits, and all I want is for you to come and be there and give your thing, and you can help hold space with me and all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. I forget to tell you that I was very pregnant at this time when she came round to my house, and I was like, well, I can't do it for a few months. No, it's fine. You can bring the baby with you. It was the most bizarre thing, right?
Wow.
And so this was in like the March, April time. I find myself with a 6-week-old baby running this class with this lady who I'd only met 3 months ago. And what was amazing is people were having these real experiences of the records. It's been since then that every time I'd go in, I go, I don't know what I'm doing. They give me this guidance and this understanding and beyond what I could have known.
Wow.
And so it's like I mean, I'm a curious lady. I like to read the things, and I'd read all the books, but the information that I was getting through the records I mean, they just made sense to me.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it was all quite kind of, I'm not sure easy is the word, but like it just made sense. And yeah, and so then I started doing readings, and now it's only really been now that I'm teaching people how to read the records themselves. And I started Soul School in January this year, and I'm running a cohort. I'm doing it this time as a 12-month container,
Mm.
and teaching people how to read their records and records of clients.
That's amazing. That's
Mm.
amazing. So I assume after that amazing experience you had,
Right,
and then the universe basically conspiring to bring you someone into your life that will just say, okay, we told you you should be teaching Akashic Records.
right,
This person is here to pull you out of your comfort zone
right,
and do it.
right,
I assume then you start doing that for yourself every day or often, right? And
right,
applying into the now.
right. I think one of the things, and certainly when I first started looking at the records, and if you look it up and you're like, what on earth are the Akashic records? The Akash is the ether, and the records the records, right? And so it's this concept that everything that we've ever said, thought, done, been is stored in this, if you like, library or information center that stores everything that we've ever done, right? And when you start to look and delve into the records and what they mean, is you often start the conversation around karma, yeah, and okay, well, something that I did in the past is now influencing the present. We start to speak about past life experiences. Who was I as a soul?
Mm.
What was it that I did? What is it that happened to me? What is it that I've picked up along the way? You often hear people talking about, past life traumas, all the bad things that happen, the witch wounds, stuff like the majority of information out there about the Akashic records is all around that. And for
Mm.
very good reason, because everything that we've ever done is stored in these records. And if I want to begin to understand what's going on with me and who I am as a soul and as a human in the present moment, then a lot of answers lie in who I was as
Informal.
a child as well, but in lives beyond what I know in my conscious awareness. And that was where I began, right? I was exploring, I was going into all these past lives, I was discovering not just the traumas and the hardships that happened to me, but also, like that life as a teacher, the skills and the talents that I had created and built up over lifetimes, and the interest that I built up over lifetimes. And suddenly, what happens then as a human is we're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not new to this. You know, in the spiritual world, we often get this imposter syndrome thing comes up,
Mm.
right? So, like when I got asked to run this training, now I wouldn't recommend that you run a training 2 weeks or 3 months after you've thought about something. I'm not I'm not sure that's the best advice I could ever give. But when you understand that you've been training for something for lifetimes rather than, well, I've only been doing it for 3 months, it gives you a different perspective on what is available to you.
Mm.
And if you can and are willing and open to the channels that have that information, those memory banks, those memory stores, if you like, then they're going to guide you and they're going to move you forward. And then you're not starting from zero, you're starting from 10, 20, 50, 100,
Wow.
right?
Mm. True.
But then it started. Okay, so I was also very interested in the law of attraction, manifestation. Like I was, and I wanted to know how it worked really. All the books, and I'd listen to all, so many different teachers around manifesting and our thoughts create our things and all of the stuff. And I would notice that sometimes it would work and sometimes it didn't work.
Mm.
And I want to know why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. So I knew it worked because I manifested some really cool things like free Disney tickets and cars and like stuff that you just I like physical things there. And I'm like, well, clearly the thing works, but then also it doesn't work. So what's going on? When I started to understand about the records, and remember, they're a library that records everything that ever was, is, has been, right? Two things.
Mm.
One, there's gonna be this kind of like where we're in now is like this tip of the iceberg, right?
Mm. Mm.
Everything that's happened to me is all the stuff that's below the iceberg. And if I can start to tap into this, I can understand actually what underlying beliefs do I have that if I start the affirmation or the visualization or something that says, I don't know, I am like rich beyond my means or something. And but actually what everything that's sitting under that iceberg is going, well, no, you're not. You've got the bills and you're poor and
Mm.
money is evil and people are going to take it away from you and all of this, which may come from your ancestry, which may come from your upbringing, may come from this. But on top of that, if I've had experiences where I have been, the king of the land or holding all of this money and these resources, but my life was unhappy or there was too much pressure or I got killed for for my wealth or something, then now I have some like real experiences that are telling me money's not safe,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm.
so I can tell you all the affirmations in the world about, oh yeah, I'm rich and famous, whatever, but they're not going to Like if everything below the iceberg is going, nope, don't get money because then you'll die, and we don't want you to die because you did that happen to you before,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
So we can go back in and start to dig these things out and start to change the energetic quality of what's going on in there. So it can be okay, well, I was rich once and it didn't end very well, but what lessons do I know? Actually, can I activate the part of me that was able to hold wealth or build wealth or, have nice things or whatever it is? Can I activate that part of me? And the part of me that then got done over or hit over the head or whatever, if I can kind of settle that down and remind myself, well, that's not going to happen in this lifetime. I'm actually very safe to be in my power, with the money, with my health, or whatever it is. So that's one thing. And I started on that. But there's another thing, right? So I really started to want to stand about, particularly about affirmations. Because again, sometimes they'd work and sometimes they didn't. And I went into my Akashic Records and I was like, tell me what's going on. I want to know what's going on. And they gave me, this is brilliant. I was like, this is the best explanation I've ever had of anything. So I'm going to share with you what they shared with me, right? So they showed me this book,
Mm.
and in this book was the affirmation on the top, right? I am rich and famous. And it's one in the book. And they showed me that when we say an affirmation, and I'm just saying it with my mouth and with my brain, yeah, I'm rich and famous, I'm writing one line in my book. And then that book goes away into my library of 100,000 million books of all my life experiences. And what I've just done, if I have written one line in my book that says I am rich and famous. And now the Akashic Records doesn't judge. So it takes that I am rich and famous as true. It takes everything we ever do as true. It's not, doesn't judge you. So if I've written this one line, I am rich and famous, but then the whole of the rest of my day, I'm moaning about money. I'm scared that people are going to take it away. I think that everyone's going to rip me off. I start telling you, oh, well, how could you possibly charge that much? You're a con artist. And no, I can't invest in myself. And all of these stories that we tell ourselves. And this one line is there,
Mm.
it's still there. But now I have like 50 lines or 500 lines or a whole book, which is giving me the other story, right?
Mhm.
So you think about that. Well, hold on a minute. Which one is going to have more of an influence in my life? The one line or the
The
100,000,
50. Yeah.
right?
Wow.
So they showed me that. But then they showed me something else. They're like, if I take that I am rich and famous and I have this real emotion that's just sitting behind it, right? I'm like, I'm feeling that. You know what they say when you do your visualizations? They're like, feel it as if it's true. What are you saying? What are you hearing? Right? So now you're creating a story around it. So now this one line, if there's an emotion behind it, is turning into a paragraph or into a page or even into a chapter. So now this I am healthy and well, or life works for me, or whatever it is, now has a whole chapter in my book, which is going to have more influence than the one line that's then been. So I now have got a page, and then if I catch myself going, oh no, things are hard, and oh, I'm scared, and all of this, then it's counteracted by something bigger, right?
Wow. Mm.
And then they showed me something else. Then they were like, okay, if you take the affirmation and you have the emotion behind it and you can see it, feel it, hear it, and all that, and then you take action on it, then you do something. And in the physical world, you're like, all right, now I'm going to reach out to somebody and see if I can go on their podcast. Or I'm going to go and write the first line of my book. Or I'm going to put my offer out there. Or I'm going to, like, whatever it is that we're stopping doing, we take action based on that affirmation. Well, now the action is going to be fueled by some form of emotion, because otherwise you wouldn't take the action anyway. And now you're taking physical steps. And now your physical body is writing not just a page, not just a chapter, but it's writing a whole book.
Wow.
And so now I've got a whole book that sits in my library of 100,000 books. And the newest book, the book I'm writing now, has the most influence of all the other books. They're like the archive, and they're informing what I'm doing now.
Mm.
But it's what I'm doing now that's creating what's my next set of books going to be,
Mm.
right?
That's so interesting.
I just got goosebumps.
I am.
If my whole book that I'm writing in this moment, if my page, if my one line that I'm writing in this moment is based only on what happened to me, which is what most of us do. Yeah, our model of the world is based on who we were, what we've learned, what we've taught, what happened to us as children, all of these things. Then I'm only ever going to continue to get what I've always got. Or I'm
Mm.
going to keep on rewriting the same stories. They say that we have, however many thoughts they say now, 60,000 thoughts a day or whatever it is. And 98% of them roughly are the same thoughts that we had the day before and the day before and the day before,
Oh.
right?
Mm.
What are we doing with that other 2%? What are those thoughts? How many pages am I writing of the thing that I actually want? How much time am I giving to the future that I want to create? If I said to you, and I say to the listeners now, just think about what it is that you really, really want. Think about the life that you desire, the things that you want to experience, that you would love to hold in your hands, the emotions that you'd like to feel. And I invite you to do that now, probably within about 30 seconds if you're lucky and if you're focused. After about 30 seconds, you'll go back to now. Yeah.
Hmm.
We give ourselves how long to spend on our dreams,
Yes. Yeah. True.
right? But we give ourselves so long, what happened, retelling the story of, okay, well, oh my God, this happened to me and it was awful. Then you phone your friend, don't you? And you're like, oh my God, this thing happened to me and it was awful. And can you believe? And all the emotion comes back. So now your Akashic records are going, oh, okay, there's some awful thing happened. So it happened once, right? This awful thing happened. It was awful, right? And it was
Mm.
really bad, or not, but we took it as really bad. And then we phone our friends, and then it's writing the same thing again. Oh, okay, well, it's having really bad. And so now that's informing me. Then we phone our other friend, and then we're lying in bed going, oh, I can't believe that they did that. And I'm so stupid. And why did I respond like this? And la, 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 la. And then we go through all the, and your Akashic records are literally writing every single thing as if they are true, as if they are happening in the moment, without judgment, without, oh, we'll add that in, but we won't add that in. They are keeping on writing. And when I had that realization, every moment, I should say, in every conscious moment that I have,
Mm.
I'm like, what am I writing in my records in this moment?
Mm. Wow. I just have goosebumps. Wow. This just takes the whole you have the power to write your next chapter to a whole new level because
Right.
wow, it is like we always heard to say like you can rewrite your story, you have the power to rewrite your story. But to be honest, I never ever made the link between that power that we do have
Mhm.
and actually the Akashic Records, which is basically the library of our lives.
Right.
Ooh. I knew this conversation would be like this. I knew it. Goosebumps.
People ask me all of the time, like, how do I read my records? What do I know? Like, what do I need to do? And actually, if we can just take that concept of
Mm.
the Akashic records in the now, and you don't need to have any special skills, you don't need to be psychic, you don't need to be able to speak to the dead, you don't need to be able to be a master manifester, whatever qualification, you don't need any of that. Just in the moment when you catch yourself thinking, when you catch yourself experiencing, when you catch yourself doing, just ask yourself, what records am I writing in this moment? Now, this isn't bypassing. This isn't like, oh, hold on a minute, something really bad happens. I don't want to write that in the records because now I'm just going to
Mm.
attract bad things. It doesn't work like that. Our bodies are brilliant and our minds are brilliant. And just like when I invited you to think your dream and your desire, it came in and maybe you saw yourself looking a certain way or doing a certain thing or being with a certain in a certain environment or whatever. That memory came, it peaked, and then it dropped. Yeah, this
Mm.
is what our body's meant to do. This is what our mind's meant to do. Something happens. If you look at the animal kingdom, something happens, you see them go in, they react how they have to react, and then they go and they kind of shake their body off, and then they come back into this homeostasis,
Mm.
and then they kind of move on with their lives. That's how it's kind of meant to go. Us humans are brilliant, and we've got this brilliant mind, which goes where we tell it to go. And if we don't allow ourselves to fully experience what it is that's going on, and bad stuff happens, like it does. We're humans. We're living a human experience. There's birth and there's death and there's grief and there's shock and there's things happen. And this is not, oh, I'm going to ignore that, because if you ignore it, it still sits there underneath and
Mm.
it keeps poking up and trying to get your attention. And so let's say I gave this scenario I gave where something bad happens and then we talk to our friends about it and then we're like rewriting it, and we do that 15 times. We haven't processed it, because if we processed it, we won't keep going on about it.
Mm.
So what do? We're like, okay, well, this happened. I can feel this happen. What's going on? What energy is happening in my body? What emotions am I feeling like this? Because that is what is creating the chapters and the pages and the books of your records. Really, the emotions that's going on, not just your thoughts. Your thoughts are the one line. Your
Mm.
emotions are the whole paragraph, the whole chapter, and your actions are the whole book, right?
Mm. Yes.
You can't change your thoughts if your emotions are going crazy, and you can't change your emotions if your actions are taking you a certain way. So you find one of them that you can connect into, and you really allow that to come and to peak and to move out and to move through. If that means going to counseling, going to therapy, doing some body work, doing the breath work, doing the stuff, so that we can begin to, if you like, neutralize or transmute the energetic component of what's going on, then you'll find that your thoughts backwards and your actions forwards will start to create that change. So please don't listen to this thinking every time I have a bad thought or every time I feel bad, actually what I'm doing is I'm attracting more in my life. No, you are writing your records. Yes, because your records are always being written, but there's no judge in there going, that was good, that was bad.
Mm.
And when you come into the acceptance and the allowance of, okay, well, this happened and I'm okay. This happened and I'm okay. Then actually what that's doing is it's building resilience and it's building experience, and it's helping you move on and move forward and continue writing new chapters rather than keeping on writing the same thing
On a loop. Yeah.
on a loop, which is what we do because we're brilliant.
Yeah, we are brilliant and staying stuck in the same narrative so sometimes. What I'm understanding with what you said is basically it doesn't affect that we have bad experience, because yes, life happens and things happen in our lives that we have no control over, and
Mhm.
we are
Right.
soul beings have a human experience
Yeah.
and go through emotions. That's
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
package. But is the repetition of writing and writing and writing that then creates what we call the karmic lessons that go into our records.
Right.
But as you've said, and for what I understand, is like if we move through these emotions without ignoring, without denying, without rejecting, because that was just going to push them away and they will be there humming in the background, always
Yeah.
telling us, always getting triggered by micro triggers that go in our lives and then creating the repetition.
Mhm.
If we move through it and just make our bodies feel safe, then we create that safety in our chapter to say, yes, this happened.
Yeah.
I felt these emotions,
Yeah.
but then I felt safe. So
Yeah.
it doesn't get an imprint in our soul to then
Yeah.
relieve the same things. Do you agree with that?
Yes. We're always have that empowerment that we can move through things. And that's rarely just by pushing up and pushing through, because when we do that, below the iceberg thing is always going to
Mm.
come back up, because it's there and it's there. And this is what these are our foundations, and none of them are good or bad, they just are. And
Mm.
so sometimes it's about looking at those foundations and going, okay, how am I feeling about that? So I'll give you an example. So some of your listeners may have heard of the vibrational scale.
Mm.
So they've measured emotions, right, and how quickly or slowly they vibrate. And the lower emotions, the slower emotions, if you like, are things like shame, guilt, anger, right? And they move up in this scale. And the idea is that our job at managing emotions is to move up through the scale. So we go from shame and guilt, and then actually a higher emotion is anger. And If you're feeling shame, you're like, oh, I'm down, and it's kind of really slow. When you're feeling anger, there's a quickening going on, and
Mm,
it's spurring you into action. Then it moves into like courage and pride as we get, okay, well, I'm doing something. And then it moves into this key moment of acceptance.
mhm,
Acceptance is up there. So if I think about that from the Akashic Records point of view, I can kind of assume that when I'm feeling in guilt and shame, which are a heavier emotion, I had something that happened to me or
mm,
for me or by me, and I feel guilt and shame around that. And so that's really heavy. So I could imagine that as like a really big book. It's massive. My book's huge because the guilt and shame is slow and heavy, and it's a heavy book. Yeah. So this thing that happened now is weighing quite heavily, is taking up a lot of space in my records. But it happened. Shame, guilt, fear, all this stuff. When I go back into my records and look at that experience, like I did with that teacher life of mine, what I was holding in that life was guilt and shame. I felt guilty that I'd left my parents. I felt shame that I'd made the wrong choice. I was scared because the school that I was in got torn down and the community didn't accept me. I was scared of my life and of the children's lives. Right. So in that record, it was big and heavy, and I was like scared to open it. I was like, oh my God, this is it. And when I went to go and do something, or I thought about doing something that, might bring me in a similar situation to that, that book's going, oh, remember me. I'm over here. Look what happened. And it's kind of showing me the energy. When I go into the Akashic Records, it's a very safe space. So
mm,
I've already said that the Akashic Records isn't judging you. This is good, this is bad. It just is. When you go in this space, it's held by, if you like, these beings or this energetic force that is of acceptance, that is of unconditional love, and is of non-judgment. Yeah, so it's like we're coming back and we're seeing this through the eyes of, you could say, source, spirit, the angelics, a higher perspective, whatever you want, right? And so we're coming into this space and we're seeing what happens. And certainly my experience of working in the records is something happens in that moment because I'm meeting that version of me
mm,
with love, non judgment. I'm meeting it with love, which is a very high frequency. So whilst guilt, shame are low and steady and heavy and kind of stagnant, energies after acceptance are things like love, bliss, joy, enlightenment. Yeah, and they're very very fast moving. So when I go in, I'm opening this book, and it's almost like the pages start to kind of tumble out, like all the stories around what happened. I'm not changing what happened. What happened? What happened? What happened? And
mhm,
it's not my job to change it because it happened. I don't want to do it again. It's there, right?
mm, yeah,
But all the stories, all the times I told my friends about it, all the guilt and the shame, all the times I told myself off about it, all the times I said, "Oh, what a stupid girl you are," and all the inner talk are
mm,
all there in the book, and it's almost like they just kind of like fall out. And so that thing that happened then comes back into its light version, its true version of this is the truth of it. I come into acceptance of, okay, well, I did what I did, and do you know what? I was doing the best I could with what I had. It's
mm,
always true.
mhm,
It's what I had, it's what I knew, it's the best I could do. And so now that book gives me a lot of wisdom because now I've got the truth of the joy that I experienced in that life because it wasn't all bad. There was
mm,
times they were amazing, right? But I couldn't access them because they were in these. I couldn't find the page because they were in all the pages of how stupid I am,
mm,
right? I can now access the talents that I built up over this life. Now they're there as almost the manual. Oh, look, I did this and I did this, and then this led to this, and this is amazing. I can access the lessons that came from it, which is like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to please everybody all the time, but if I can help one person, then maybe my job is done. I couldn't see that, right? So I'm coming into it from this new perspective. You liken that to a life now. We have to go back and go, okay, what happened? How am I feeling about this? What's my body telling me? What part of me is triggered by this? What stories am I created from it? Like all of this, recognize it where we are. How can I meet that with love?
mm,
How can I then come into acceptance of what happened to me, for me, by me? Yeah, doesn't make it right, Doesn't mean what you, oh yeah, we just forgive everyone for everything they did. It's not really that. It's like we were doing the best we could. I am better in that moment because I didn't know better, or I didn't have the resources, or I was overwhelmed, or I was stressed, or it was a biological response that was driving me. I don't know. I couldn't have done it. I wanted to do better and I couldn't. But
Mm.
now I know it. I'm dissipating that energy, and now I'm better aligned. I'm, if you like, clearer minded, so that next time that comes in, it's not a big trigger response. The safety mechanisms don't all go up and go quick, run away, or
Mm.
fight for it, or push it away, or freeze. Now I'm informed, and
Mm.
now my thoughts, my actions, my emotions all run with that.
Wow. And that's alchemy in its pure form, isn't
Right.
it? Wow. So it just goes to show that we can use Akashic Records not only just to get to know our soul and who we were,
Mm,
because we can get, again, going back to the beginning of the conversation when we acknowledge that it can be a rabbit hole.
mm.
We sometimes get so entangled in the mystic journey that we were in former lives and all
Right,
the things that happen that we lived and that we just can't remember. So we get so entangled in that, wanting to know more,
right,
that we might forget to live our lives now,
right,
isn't it? And the
right.
Akashic Records just gets to show that yes, we can do all of that, we can learn from it, and yet live the present moment and this life that we were gifted.
It is all about the present moment. And every spiritual text in every philosophy that you read to, it tells you two things, right? Know thyself. That you
Mm.
like you boil all them down. What do they say? Know thyself. Moment is now, right?
Mm.
And so sometimes we can get caught up in one of them. Know thyself. Okay, well, I'm going to go in my Akashic records. This is where I was at the beginning. I'm
Mm.
going to go in my Akashic records, and I'm going to know myself, and I'm going to learn all the things about me, and I'm going to go in, or you go to counselling, or bring up all the things that ever happened to me, and it's fine and it's healthy, and these things are fascinating. However, our job is to go, okay, well, like, know myself, not know who I was, know who I am now, know what it is that happened to me, for me, or by me, that's now influencing who I am, and then making that choice of, okay, am I going to let that drive me? Is that something that I want to drive me? Is it something that I can use to help me create change? Yeah, is it something that I can use to help other people understand themselves better, for example? Or is it something that I can just accept, well, this was part of my story and I'm bringing it along for the ride, but it's no longer my guiding force?
Mm. Absolutely. And I think what I'm hearing is that's when you break the karma. That's
Mm.
when you break the karmic cycles, isn't it? Is when you acknowledge,
Yeah,
you see it there,
yeah.
but you no longer let it be in the driver's seat of your life.
Right. Karma's a funny one, and depending again who you talk to will depend on
Mm.
the what definition we'll give. But for me, again, looking from a soul point of view and from an Akashic point of view, if we think of karma as these things, these righting wrongs,
Mm.
right? This is not some force that has been forced upon you. They're like, well, you did a bad thing in that life and now you need to pay for it. I have never experienced that. What I have experienced is, oh, I did something in there and I'm carrying, you
Mm.
know, guilt or shame or misunderstanding around that. Actually, in this life, I'd like to do better. In this life, I would like to master unconditional love. In this life, I would like to master forgiveness. In this life, I would like to master understanding. I'd like to master enlightenment. I'd like to master compassion,
Mm.
right? Because in that last life, well, look at me and how I treated people who were poorer than me or less than, less healthy than me or whatever it was, right? So it's something that us as a soul on some level decides, like, okay, I'm going to come and master that. Now, if that's true, which I think it is, if that's true, then, and I want to come down here for example and master compassion, right? The easiest way, or the most effective way for me to master compassion is to bring me into a life where that's not going to be easy.
Mm.
It's going to bring me into a life where I'm like, well, people aren't very nice. And what, hold on, I meant to feel compassion for them, but they're all being horrible to me. If everyone was just being lovely and amazing, then compassion's not something that I really need to dig into and fall into, because it's just there and it's just natural. If I want to master it, if I want to evolve as a soul and become more of who I am as a soul being, and I want to master unconditional, well, probably I'm going to find myself in a family where love isn't the first thing on everyone's mind,
Mm,
right?
absolutely.
And then we start to look at other people and their relationships, and rather than trying to change them because they're giving me a hard time, it's like, or maybe we're all here living out some like weird agreement that we're like, well, I'll be the horrible one here so that you can master your compassion. And even though I'm a soul and I don't want to be mean, I'm going to be mean because it's going to help you, and at the same time that's going to help me understand this. And it's like there's this huge tapestry going on
Mm,
that we don't really understand as a human.
mm,
But when we look at it from a soul level, it does bring compassion. It does bring unconditional love. It does bring acceptance, because A, everyone's doing the best they can with what they've got. B, we're all trying to resolve this kind of karmic understanding, this soul growth and this soul evolution, and gain skills that we didn't have before this life, or that we lost or we forgot. And for me, that completely changed how I understand humans and their
mm.
behavior and our behavior, both for myself and for everyone who's around me and my clients, and world scenarios which are very hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you clarified karma. That's the view I have of karma.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
see it like a mean thing, like a payback, or
Right.
there's so many misconceptions about karma.
Right.
Mostly being that it's such a bad thing, and
Hmm.
a payback for whatever you did
Hmm.
in this life or another. So I'm very, very happy that you clarify this and we share the same view about it. And also that you just basically talked about our soul contracts. This is
Hmm.
what this tapestry is, what it is. Our soul
Right.
shows this moment in time, the country, the family, the dynamics, the conditioning, all of it is just there, all the ingredients, just so we are able to move through these karmic lessons as
Yeah.
in, I want to improve. It's just, is that our soul mastering and mastering and mastering
Yeah.
things that through life. So we somehow, and I believe this, at some point, we'll be able to ascend and not have to
Yeah.
go back.
Right. I think it's a choice. And
Yeah.
I think that we make that choice when we've experienced every single side of every single coin. And
Mm,
that means sometimes we come back, and we're the people that we very much dislike in this life, we come back as them, maybe. Not because we're being punished, but in order to, I'll go through this quickly because I know we're running out of time. But when I asked about this purpose in life and why do we experience all of these, like, why do some people have to experience such hardness? They gave me this amazing thing that we're all moving into the white, yeah, the light, into the great white light. This is the ascension, the bliss, whatever. And what is white made of? Well, white isn't an absence of color. White is all the colors, right? Red, or you got all the colors, all the primary colors. Bring them together. You see your LED lights in the kitchen. If you look at them close, they've got red, green, blue, right? It's all the colors. Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
And and so in order for us to reach this great white light, we need to be red, and we need to be green, and we need to be blue, and we need to be yellow, and we need to have experienced all of that. Otherwise, we're not going to make the great white light. It's just going to be like a funny shade of yellow or whatever, right? If we don't experience the balance in color from it. I write about that more in my book, and that philosophy, but it's something to contemplate when we're bringing judgments to either our situation or to others.
That's beautiful. I never heard of this analogy with the light, but it makes sense because if you think about it, and I talk about this on the podcast and with my clients and so on all the time, is that we are both light and dark. We
Right.
have both light and shadow within us. as much as we sometimes want to hide or portray that we don't have those shadows, we do have them.
Right.
We do have them. And what happens is what we dislike in other people is basically our projections of the things that we dislike in ourselves or we
Right.
don't accept or reject in ourselves. And so, at the soul perspective, it makes sense that we experience all those lights, all those shadows, all those golden aspects as well, so that we become whole and then go into the bright white light. That's beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, something to contemplate, I think, as we move through this magnificent life that we live.
It is. It just makes things seem less daunting,
Mm,
I would say, because sometimes, as you said, life is hard and
yeah,
things happen.
yeah.
We are in a 3D world, so yes, shite is gonna happen
Right.
sometimes, and we might fall into this trap of feeling like we had enough. That's
Mhm,
daunting. That is tiring,
mhm.
exhausting, and we forget to see the good things and the writing, the chapter of our books in
Mhm.
our Akashic records. All the good things that we experience because they are, as you said, in the middle of all those pages where we are just moaning and complaining and focusing
Right.
on that.
Do you know what's just so much better? Dedicate a whole chapter to the moaning and complaining. Really make it the best chapter you've ever written in your life about how crappy life is, right? And then move on to the next one rather than let it taint every page in your book,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Be in it, be with it. It's there. We are, maybe that's you experiencing the red as you're trying to move into the orange, and it's fine. Like, be with it, be in the beauty and the love and the acceptance of, yeah, this happened and I think life is shit right now and I hate everybody. Be in there, be in it to its fullest, and then move on, and then start creating. Where do I want to be? How do I what's my dream? What's driving me? What's the light? How am I becoming? Who am I becoming? And how do I want to help influence the world? Let that drive you.
Mm.
We we don't want to get to the end of this one and go, oh god, I wasted that one. Now I'm going to have to come back again and do it all over again.
Oh my god.
Right? Right? You want to go back and go, yeah, I lived this life, and wasn't it a fun ride?
Mm.
And didn't I learn and grow? Right? And then next time you can come back and you can move into your Akashic records and go, look at that one where we lived through 2020. That was
Oh,
fun, wasn't it?
yeah. Oh, it's gonna be in our records. That's true. The year of the pandemic.
Right. Yeah, and what do we learn? How do we grow? And like all of that, right?
Mm,
You It's interesting for me that as I really started to l- help, as I started to work with the records as a guidance tool, it definitely helped me change my perspectives on the now moment and who I am and who I'm becoming and who I am to be. So, I think for the listeners, you don't have to go and get a reading. And yes, they can be like really insightful. You don't have to know how to read them, but if you are drawn to doing that, it's something that is life changing, not just for your clients, but for you as a human yourself. But these records are always accessible because you're always writing in them. So just for a moment, what am I writing now? What would I like to see in there? If I'm saying an affirmation, am I writing a word, a line, a chapter, a book? Like, truly, what am I doing?
mm.
What's the story that's being written here? And then every moment's a new moment.
Oh, I love that. I would love that. And I was just about to ask you if you had like any small tips for someone that is just starting out and is getting curious and is listening to this conversation
Mhm.
and say, oh, okay, there's a lot of synchronicities happening now in my life. And it's not the first time I'm hearing about Akashic Records. Okay, I'll give it a try.
Yeah,
You did say that you don't have to go to a therapist or a reader.
yeah,
Obviously, if you want, like maybe be guided,
hmm,
because at the beginning, like I,
yeah.
I talk from experience, to me, it's easier to be guided, to have
Oh, for sure.
that voice saying, okay, just go there, how you feeling, all of
Yeah,
it. So Any
Yeah.
tip?
Yeah, if you do want to explore, I do recommend working with somebody. If you really want to go into your records and discover some past life stuff and what's going on, I do recommend working with somebody for so many reasons, but somebody who will be expert at guiding you and keeping you safe and helping
Mhm.
you glean the meaning and the transformation on it. So just do your research, maybe look at a few people where you feel comfortable and how they work in the records. You can work with it yourself. I mean, on my website, I've got a number of different workshops that you can run through that will guide you through different aspects of your records, which might be something that you're interested in. But for everybody, like I said, you don't need to have psychic skills. You're constantly, always, in every single moment, on every single day, writing something in this book. And just stop and ask yourself, what am I writing in this moment? Is this something that I would like to have scored in my book for eternity? The
Wow.
answer is no. Go, okay, well, what is something that I can cultivate right now? Yeah, there's not bypassing it. It's like, what is something that I can do and or feel or know or say or reach out to that feels better, that's going to help me move in, that's going to help me find the miracles that are available to us in our lives.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Tell us, where can our listeners find you?
So I hang out on social media, probably way too much. So you can find me at the Melissa Amos across the platforms, mainly Facebook, also YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. My website is melissa-amos.com. If you go on there and go to the / free hyphen gift, there's a meditation on there that will help you really hear that inner guidance and that inner wisdom to help you understand how you receive that intuitive knowing that we all have,
Mm.
and then also how to turn it up a little should you want to.
I love that. I love that. I'll put all the links and all the information in the show notes
Thank
so you
you.
can check out Melissa online, stalk her like I do.
Oh, and my book is available on Amazon. If you put Mystic in Training wherever you are in the world, Mystic in Training, my book Memoirs of a Mystic in Training is in there, and it really is the story of how I understand my life to be. It's like my Akashic Records. That's
Is
what you're
it?
reading.
Mm.
And there's all tips in there about the Akashic Records, reading them. There's a whole load of stuff. So if you liked how, and I write how I speak. So if you like that, the
That's
book would be
amazing.
good fun for you.
You launched the book, was it last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, August it came out. Yeah,
Almost a year. Oh
no,
God.
I
I
know,
believe
time
it.
flies.
Oh, that was such an amazing conversation. I knew it from the moment we planned this conversation. I knew it's gonna be amazing. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your story, for not holding back your knowledge, which I find is so important. Sometimes, people can be a bit like, I know all of this, but I'm not going to share all I know because I want to keep it for myself.
Right, where's the fun in that? Give me a rabbit hole. I'll go dig down it and I'll bring you with me. That's my
Oh
philosophy.
yes, please. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for this conversation, and yeah, I'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. I hope you have enjoyed this amazing conversation with Melissa and that you took away a lot of positives about exploring your Akashic records. Before I love you and leave you, I will pull a card from the Trust Journaling deck. And the card I pulled is from the Reflection Suite, and the soul inquiry is: does my outer world reflect my inner world? Does my outer world reflect my inner world? And the affirmation is: I am worthy of my dreams. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to the Soulcery Podcast. and for holding space for this conversation. It is truly magical to be able to walk with you on this journey of soul healing and inner transformation. If you resonated with this episode and found it valuable, I would be grateful if you could leave a review on iTunes. Your feedback helps me reach more souls searching for guidance and healing. For more guidance and soul wisdom to support soul awakening women through the journey of alchemy, please visit my website www.lisiacosta.co.uk. Love and healing to all. See you on the next one.